This week on the Effective Faith podcast, we're thinking about whether or not setting up a morning or an evening routine is going to be helpful for you in any way. The short answer is, I believe pretty strongly, yes, it is. The truth is, we all have some kind of morning or evening routine already. That's not in any doubt. The question is whether or not it is one that we've actively decided on, or whether or not we've just passively fallen into it. This is the first episode of the Effective Faith podcast. It's a podcast talking about all things related to effectiveness and faith. We'll answer questions about productivity, app reviews, the best ways to use them, as well as tools and gear that will help us get stuff done. We'll talk about theology, we'll talk about Christian living, and how to live for Jesus in the 21st century. We'll also discuss how to approach getting things done in a way that supports our well-being and helps us to honour Jesus better. For now, I'm going to be setting the topics, but I'm also inviting questions from you, the listeners, and I'll use this podcast to try and answer them. So if you've got a question about any of these things, then drop it in the comments below, or you can email me, effectivefaith15.58@gmail.com, or you can use the contact form that's on effectivefaith.org. Maybe you've heard about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's reported that he gets up at 4 a.m. every single day and spends at least 2 hours in his iron paradise, what he calls the gym. Maybe you know that former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink. He tweets a picture of his watch every single day at around 4:30 a.m. and then tweets a picture of some weights or some gym equipment and a sweat-soaked concrete floor about an hour later. And so we think morning routines, they're for crazy people. They mean getting up stupidly early. They mean hours and hours and hours of different stuff back to back, often involving massive amounts of physical exercise, some kind of weird green blended drink, and all that sort of stuff that ultimately we just want nothing to do with. Well, yes, there are people who do this, and they swear by it, and that's great for them. But actually, a morning routine and an evening routine both have a very simple aim. In the morning, we need to get ourselves ready and set up for the day. And in the evening, we need to close down, wind down, and drift into a good night's sleep. That's it. That's the aim. But why, you ask, is this a good idea? Well, my point is, we all have these already. The question is whether or not they're actually effective, or whether or not they're making our day harder for us. You see, too often in the past, my mornings have followed the pattern established by the Saved by the Bell theme song, falling out of bed with just enough time to shower, get dressed, running for the bus, arriving at the office still feeling like I should be asleep, and with no idea who I am, what day it is, what planet I'm on. Or maybe if we have a family, then the focus is actually all about getting everybody else ready for the day. No thought is given to getting ourselves mentally and physically prepared. And at night, we work, we do jobs right up until the point when we crash, and then we flop on the sofa, the couch, we watch TV, or we mindlessly scroll on our phones until we fall asleep, phone still in hand. You see, we all have some kind of morning and some kind of evening routine. That's not in any doubt. The question is it something you've actively chosen? You see, a simple morning routine, a simple evening routine will have a number of benefits. First, both of them serve to set our body clock over time. The time we get up, the time we go to bed, somehow it gets hardwired into us. And so over time, getting up, going to bed gets easier and easier. Our body adjusts and the benefits compound. The intentionality of it, the thinking it through, making a plan, following that, it works like taking a run up in the morning. You see, the aim is to prepare us for the day ahead, and therefore actually thinking this through means we set ourselves up for a much more effective day. This is done primarily by maybe hitting more notes in getting ourselves up and ready than we would do normally. I'll say more about that later. And then as the day draws to a close, the process of following a small routine to close down the day, to wind down our minds and our bodies, will ultimately, and especially over time, lead to better sleep and set us up for a better tomorrow. Now, before I dive into outlining those notes to hit in the morning and in the evening routine, we need to address what to avoid. Complexity here is a real killer. The aims are simple, so keep it simple. You don't need to start your day with 10 to 20 different things that all in takes around 2 to 3 hours. You don't need to drink 3 raw eggs, run 10 kilometers, do 100 press-ups, read 10 chapters of the Bible, spend 30 minutes learning Greek, and then read 2 chapters of a book for studying. The more complex it is, the longer it takes you, the more likely you are to never follow your morning routine. And being honest, you're not really setting yourself up for the day if you're doing all of those things. You're just starting it a bit earlier. You're not hitting the aim. Inflexibility, that's also something that's not going to work for you. Maybe you're not well. Maybe you've been kept up through the night by something you've been thinking about, or a noise in the street, or a baby or something. The point is we aim to follow it, but we need to be flexible based on actual circumstances. Avoid unrealistic expectations, especially right at the start. The point is keep it simple, keep it effective, rather than shoot for the moon and fail. Don't expect to be able to get up at 4 a.m. tomorrow if you've never done that before. Don't expect to include a 30-minute run every day as soon as you wake up if it's not something that you're used to. And lastly, a thing to avoid, copying somebody else. Don't do it. Everyone needs to do this differently, and whilst I would recommend that you look at other people's examples, you are going to need to tweak them to make them work for you. So then, what are the notes you want to be hitting with your morning and evening routine? Well, in the morning, it's all about waking yourself up. It's all about getting yourself going. To do that, I think you need to remember that you're physical, you're biological, you're a physical and biological being, you're a spiritual being, and you also have a mind. There are some practical things that you'll need to do as well, and each of these things are important. So maybe start by drinking some water. A friend of mine who studied sports science at university, he once told me that in the summer months, you can sweat up to 2 litres of water overnight, and you need to replenish that in the morning. Some people, they add lemon to this to add antioxidants or something. I cannot stand lemon water. Helpful reminder there, I'm waking up in 6 hours. Now at this point, I'd recommend doing some kind of exercise, stretching, or maybe something like a few push-ups. You see, the reason is this kind of physical thing, it really does stimulate the body in waking up. If you're a Christian, then I would move into reading the Bible and to prayer. You can follow a Bible reading plan, a devotional book. It doesn't need to be your main or your only input for the day, but it is really helpful, I think, to have something right at the outset to remind you who you are, who you serve, and why you're here. It's always good to do something that's mentally stimulating as well, like maybe reading for 10 to 20 minutes. Might be a book, might be an article, that kind of thing. Normally, I would be a proponent of having a good breakfast, so I would include that as well in your morning routine. Perhaps getting outside is going to be helpful, even if it's just for 5 minutes of fresh air, if it's not chucking it down with rain. I live in Scotland, so it's often chucking it down with rain, but there we go. Lastly, think about the practical stuff. For the most of us, the basics here are going to be showering and getting dressed. For others, it might involve making lunch, packing a bag, that kind of thing. Now, the order in which you do these things is actually totally up for grabs, though I would drink the water first and I would definitely shower before getting dressed. And it may well be that based on your current situation that some other stuff has to happen in the middle, like getting children up, feeding them. That's okay. But what about in the evening? In the evening, it's all about closing down. It's all about winding down. Now, I have a really mini checklist to finish my day, to plan tomorrow. Now, I won't go through this in detail now, but the aim here is that I'm not still feeling like I haven't done everything I need to do, and so I'm still thinking and wondering about it. Today is finished. That's the aim. And then I do something to try and help me relax. Now, for me, that's reading. And then I go to bed. A lot of science suggests that switching off all screens an hour before bed is a really, really good idea, and I'm trying to follow this. You'll note from what I said earlier about needing to get up in 6 hours that I'm not doing that today. Little notification came up on my screen. Sometimes I will also watch something on television instead of reading, or maybe I'll do a little bit of both. But what I would say is I would strongly recommend doing things like reading or replying to emails as you wind down for bed, reading the news, scrolling through social media, or doing anything on our phones, in fact, during this time. The time you get up and the time you go to bed is for you to decide. It's going to depend on what your life looks like. For me, I think my current morning plan needs about an hour or so I need to get up an hour before my day needs to start. From there, I can work out what time I need to go to bed, and therefore what time to start winding down. I aim to close my day and plan tomorrow at the moment between 9:30 p.m, and then I read for 30 minutes to an hour or so before going to bed. That's it. It's pretty simple, but the benefits of this cannot be overstated. Now, as we finish, there's a few things to remember. Consistency is good, so I'd aim to do this every day as far as you can, notwithstanding the flexibility I said about earlier. I'd also aim to keep the times consistent every day, even at weekends, as far as you can. My experience is that when I sleep in on a weekend, it prevents my body clock from adjusting, and it just makes the rest of the week harder. However, it's not wrong to use the weekend to catch up on sleep if we need that for whatever reason. The season of life you're in determines what is reasonable for you. I'd say if you have young children, your plans are going to need to be far less involved, far shorter, far simpler, and far more flexible. Don't beat yourself up when you fail. You will not have a perfect streak. And the point is that these plans, these routines, they are servants, not masters. Going along with that, don't beat anyone else up if they mess this up for you. Your family may need you, meaning you cannot follow your plan. That's good. Be thankful that you've been able to serve other people. And so, in conclusion, I highly recommend that you spend a little bit of time thinking about how do you want to actually start your day? How do you actually want to end your day? Be intentional in this. Be active in it. Please don't just passively follow the path of least resistance. That's not going to get you anywhere. Now, if you have any questions or comments about this, then please do email me, as I said earlier, effectivefaith15.58@gmail.com. drop it in the comments below, or you can contact me through effectivefaith.org. Same again if you have questions for me to address in a future episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do share this with anyone that you think might like it. Put it on whatever social media platforms you do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check out these other episodes of the podcast as well. That will really help me. And just remember, my tagline with Effective Faith is, you can be very productive without being very effective.